Lesson 8, Types of Statistical Studies. Not only can data be collected by different methods, but also the situation in which the data can be collected could also vary. It is absolutely essential to differentiate the different types of statistical studies in order to realize the limitations or the extent of the inferences and conclusions that can be reached based on the available data. In general, there are two basic types of statistical studies: observational and experimental. In an observational study, specific data and characteristics are observed and collected, but no attempt to modify the subjects being studied is undertaken or can be accomplished. For instance, a stratified random sample of 44 Sierra College elementary statistics students was selected to receive a survey. Half of these students were enrolled in an on-campus section, and half were enrolled in an online section. The 22 selected students which were enrolled in the on-campus sections of elementary statistics were mailed the survey and instructed to return their responses anonymously in the provided return envelope. The 22 selected students which were enrolled in the online sections of elementary statistics were emailed the survey and instructed to return their responses via email to their instructor, that is, not anonymously. The issue under investigation is to determine if anonymous responses to the survey differ in any way from responses which were not anonymous. This type of study is an observational study because the student responses to the survey were observed and collected with no attempt to modify the subjects being studied. In an experimental study, each subject is randomly assigned to a treatment group by the investigator, and then specific data and characteristics are observed and collected. For instance, a simple random sample of 44 Sierra College elementary statistics students was selected to receive a survey. Half of these students were randomly assigned to the treatment to submit their responses anonymously, and half were randomly assigned to the treatment to submit their responses in a manner which was not anonymous. The issue under investigation is to determine if anonymous responses to this survey differ in any way from responses which were not anonymous. This type of study is an experimental study because each student was randomly assigned to a treatment group by the investigator, and then the student responses to the survey were observed and collected. The main distinction between observational studies and experimental studies involves the investigator's ability to randomly assign subjects to treatment groups. In observational studies, the investigator does not or cannot assign subjects to particular treatment groups, whereas in experimental studies, the investigator randomly assigns subjects to various treatment groups. By randomly assigning subjects to the various treatment groups, experimental studies help protect against potential unknown biases interfering with the statistical analysis of results. Observational studies do not provide this level of protection against confounding factors, since randomly assigning subjects to treatment groups is not undertaken. For instance, if a significant difference in survey responses is detected in each of the previously mentioned studies, a much stronger conclusion can be reached based on the experimental study than would be possible for the observational study. By randomly assigning students to either anonymous or not anonymous response conditions, the experimental study can attribute the difference in responses to whether the student was able to respond to the survey anonymously or not. That is, allowing a student to respond to the survey anonymously appears to cause a different response than if they were not allowed to respond anonymously. Without randomization, it is not possible to eliminate or neutralize potential biases or confounding factors from the results. Thus, there is no way to completely establish causation with an observational study. In this case, the observational study can conclude that the difference in responses is associated with, and not necessarily caused by, whether the student was able to respond to the survey anonymously or not. One reason for this weaker conclusion is due to the fact that the observed difference in responses can not only be attributed to whether the student was able to respond to the survey anonymously or not, but also if the student was enrolled in an on-campus or online section of the course. observational studies are unable to eliminate alternative explanations of the observed results. Conducting an experimental study is always preferred over conducting an observational study. However, certain situations do not allow for the random assignment of subjects into specific treatment groups. Sometimes the reason is inherent, such as gender or race. Other times the reason is ethical, such as smoking or alcohol consumption. In these situations, an observational study is a viable alternative.